I'm Nicola Tandy, National Sales Director at realestate.com.au. And today, for our first episode of our 2021 Developer Insights series, vlog series, I'm joined by Kirstin Hodgson, who is our Market Insights and Research Manager at REA. Thanks so much for joining us, Kirstin. How are you today?
Hello, thank you so much for having me today, Nicola. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about the new apartment buyer journey and explore how it's changed over the past year. We all know that it's been a really turbulent year and COVID has impacted the property market heavily. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely. I know it obviously has been a really interesting 18 months and that our viewers in particular are really eager to understand what came out of our new home buyer research in terms of the impact of COVID. And today we're going to unpack that in relation to the home buyer journey. So let's kick off with my first question, if that's all right, Kirstin.
Okay.
Talk about the journey for new apartment buyers. How has this changed to when we last conducted the research?
So we last conducted this research at the end of 2019, start of 2020. And when we compare the results from then until now, the reasons for buying a new apartment haven't really changed, but they are more pronounced in some areas. So we saw that owner occupiers are more driven to buy an apartment for financial reasons this year, such as financial investment for the future, current market conditions, and government schemes. However, we're also seeing that life moments, so starting or growing a family, and cultural factors, the Australian dream of owning a home, are also continuing to play a strong role.
And when you actually looked into the buyer types or buyer segments, were there any further insights that you can share with us?
Yes, so when we have a look at these motivations by buyer type, we see that first home buyers are more likely than subsequent buyers and investors to be driven by that Australian dream of owning a home. Government incentives, particularly the first home buyer scheme, I don't think that's a surprising find, but it's always nice to throw it in. And life moments such as moving out of their parents' home or starting their own family.
And you touched on investors briefly. Obviously, with overseas migration halted at the moment, I'm really eager to understand what the profile of our domestic investors look like in the research this year.
Yeah, so I mean, despite that, we actually saw minimal changes for investors when we compared the 2 years of research. They continue to be attracted to property because they see it as a safe long-term investment and also as a good opportunity to grow their financial portfolio. We did add some new into the research this year for you, and we reintroduced a question that actually looked at how investors are finding their investment opportunities. And we found that they can actually be quite independent in doing this. So the research found that 2/3 of them found opportunities via their own online search. Just under half of them find them through their personal network, so through their friends, family, or colleagues, and 1/3 of them source opportunities through professionals such as their accountant and financial planner. I'll just add there because I realize it doesn't add up to 100%. This actually was a multiple response question, but we are seeing that the majority of them are finding opportunities themselves.
Yes, okay. And I did note you said you reintroduced the question. When was the last time we asked that in the research, and what's changed since the last time we asked that question?
So we actually asked this question way back in 2018, and we found that the independence that we saw this year is actually a growing trend. So investors are more likely to be looking for opportunities themselves and reaching out to their friends and family, and less likely to be turning to professionals such as their accountant and their financial planner.
So we know, obviously, it's been a very different 18 months. In terms of what the buyer journey looked like this year, what has that impact been?
So just to kind of give you a bit of context for this research, we spoke to 1,000 new apartment buyers, but we spoke to people who had been through the journey in the past 12 months and those who are currently going through the journey, and they're in different stages of the journey. So I'll first talk about those who've been through the journey in the past 12 months. And we actually saw that their journey length is significantly shorter. So we're looking at a journey length of 8 months versus the 18 months we saw back at the end of 19, start of 2020. We're also seeing this drop across all buyer segments, so first home buyers, subsequent buyers, and investors. So it's not one particular segment that's driving this change, it is across the board. When we had a look at these individual journey stages, so we ask length spent in journey stage, we're actually seeing that buyers spent much less time in the earlier stages of the journey, so the exploration and investigation stages, which is suggesting to us that buyers were more certain about wanting to buy or felt more pressure to make a move. When we first saw the results, we were surprised. I know you and I were having a chat about it, and it wasn't really what we were expecting to see. But once we started digging, it started to make complete sense.
So we did discuss it, and you did unpack it a little further. What is driving that shorter journey?
So when we kind of looked into this even more, we really think that there are three main things that could make the journey that much shorter. The first one is market conditions. So we're seeing lower than ever in interest rates, heaps of government stimulus, and so many competitive, amazing offers from developers. All of these things we believe would have gone from prompting buyers to go from thinking about buying to actually starting the process. And I think the fact that these conditions won't be around forever adds to the speed that we're seeing buyers move through the journey. The second thing would be buyers being ready to transact. So we know that the market has been stop-start in some areas. So Victoria and New South Wales, I feel you there. And we really feel that that's building frustration and readiness, particularly for people who've been wanting to buy for a while. This, coupled with higher budgets due to reduced spend in other areas, has contributed to an increased readiness to transact, and also to do so at a higher price. So actually, when we have a look at the average new apartment buyer budget, we actually saw it grow from 700,000 in 2019-2020 to over 850,000 this year, which is a massive jump. So in short, buyers were ready and raring to go. And then finally is FOMO, so fear of missing out. So we like to do as much analysis as possible, particularly for this series. So we did some extra analysis to really help us understand why this was happening. And we looked at the number of listings and inquiries, and we looked at when we both of these figures from when we last conducted the research to now, and we're actually seeing less properties for sale and more buyers wanting to buy. So less listings and more inquiries. And we really feel that there's nothing like wanting something that everybody else wants to force you to make a quicker decision. I think what's really interesting in all this is when we actually have a look at buyers who are currently going through the process, and they're at various stages in the journey. When we conducted the research in August, we're actually seeing that the journey is taking about 16 months on average, which is suggesting that maybe it's returning to what we saw pre-pandemic, which was around 18 months. And I think it will be really interesting to see how this plays out over the next year or so.
Yeah, it absolutely is going to be interesting, particularly even if this remains to be a shorter journey in the sort of short to medium term. What do you have in terms of suggestions for our customers, developers, what this means for how they engage with buyers?
So it's going to be really important for developers to respond to buyers who inquire in a timely manner and get the information to them as quick as possible in a format that suits them. We know from this research and other research that many buyers are considering multiple property types and multiple developments, especially at the start of their journey. So if they're reaching out to developers and asking for information or going online to look for information themselves and they can't access it, there is actually a risk that they might go elsewhere.
It's really interesting you touch on that. It reminds me of our 2019 Lead Nurturing Masterclass and some of the content around early stage buyers. And I think it's really important that everyone remembers early stage buyers are absolutely quality leads and that they have potentially a higher propensity to transact sooner now more than ever.
Absolutely.
Finally, Kirstin, I want to touch on how buyers are feeling as they go throughout the journey at the moment. We know obviously emotion plays a huge role in purchasing property, particularly for certain segments. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so we know from last year's research that emotions are high throughout the buying journey. I mean, if we've gone through it, I'm sure we can really relate to that. And buying property is seen as fundamentally positive, but there is a lot of negativity dotted throughout the process, driven by uncertainty, lack of confidence, and also process complexity. I think if we throw 18 months of COVID and a very hot market into the mix, buyers have even more concerns. So I don't think we'll be surprised there. The research found that they're concerned about the potential impact of overinflated property prices, more competition for properties, which we've just spoken about in relation to FOMO, and delays to build timelines, all of which can add stress to the decision-making process. So here, when we think about what customers can do to help alleviate some of this, it's important to provide clear, proactive communication around these areas and other areas to help tackle these concerns up front, guiding the buyer through the journey and helping them understand the landscape and assess their options.
Fantastic insight. Kirstin, thank you so much. I'm conscious we've actually covered quite a bit of content today. For our viewers, could you just summarise what are the 3 key takeaways you want people to remember from today's session?
Yeah, we definitely have covered a lot. I feel like I've been speaking a lot as well. It's always great to do a recap. So the 3 things that I think developers should take away from today is that motivations from buying a new apartment remain the same year on year, but we are seeing differences in motivations by buyer type. So it's important for developers to segment their customers, and so they know who they're talking to and they can adapt their communications and conversations around this. The second thing would be that the length of the buying journey shortened due to COVID. And although we're seeing early signs that it may be returning to pre-pandemic levels, developers need to ensure that they respond to buyer inquiries promptly and provide the right information at the right time to help buyers make quick decisions if they need to. I'm particularly thinking about this about buyers who are inquiring at the very early stages of their journey in the exploration and the investigation stages. And then finally, the buying journey is emotional and buyers have even more concerns this year. So developers should encourage their sales team to acknowledge this and be aware of this so they can support and guide buyers throughout the journey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kirstin. Thank you again for joining us. If anyone wants more information in terms of the new home buyer journey for apartment buyers, you can download a PDF from our development hub under the 2021 Developer Insights series. In terms of what's next, we're going to be joined in our next video episode by James Algar from Mortgage Choice, and we're going to be covering the impact or the considerations when financing a property, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from James. Thanks so much for joining us again, Kirstin, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks.